A 6-year-old girl is found viciously raped and murdered. No witnesses, no murder weapon. It's up to forensic science to catch her killer. But the science points to someone no one suspected.
It was 7 weeks ago yesterday that Andrea Atkinson disappeared from her home.
When the forensics evidence started to turn his way, it surprised us a little bit.
The experts say their technology doesn't lie.
Would you expect to see this profile again? No, you would not.
One man's innocence or guilt hangs in the balance.
It's a case that had too much reliance on science that certainly in some aspects we know today is just flawed.
This is the story of the tragic death of a little girl and the story of forensics on trial. October 14th, 1990, a low-rent apartment building in downtown Toronto. It's a quiet Sunday morning on a holiday weekend. A 6-year-old girl named Andrea Atkinson goes missing. Andrea's single mom calls police. She describes her daughter as blonde, outgoing, wearing a pink coat and blue stockings. An apartment key is tied to a whistle around her neck. The police try to calm her, saying Andrea will probably turn up at a friend's. By the end of the day, there's still no sign of Andrea. Police launch a massive search. Rick Gauthier was a homicide detective in 1990.
Andrea was not a kind of child that ventured away from the building, so the fact that she went missing, suddenly disappeared, that was very unusual, and that made us start to think that there may be foul play involved.
News of the missing child spreads like wildfire.
More than 33 hours ago, 6-year-old Andrea Marie Atkinson told...
As day turns to night, police classify Andrea's disappearance a homicide.
Andrea never made it back to the...
After interviewing neighbors, Gauthier gets his first lead.
The first significant piece of information that surfaced in this case that made us suspicious or concerned about foul play was a sighting given by a resident nearby who said that in the early morning hours of Sunday they had seen a young blonde-haired girl who they thought was Andrea being forced into a blue van and driven away.
For the past 5 days, the search has been focused on wilderness areas such as...
The eyewitness is mistaken. Police have lost precious time chasing down a false lead.
Police have already searched the immediate area twice today and tomorrow plan to expand their search.
Gauthier calls in the forensic team, highly specialized CSIs who search for microscopic clues. Detective Rick Bunting was the CSI assigned to search Andrea's bedroom for forensic evidence. His grim job is to find fingerprints to identify Andrea in case she is found dead.
When you're trying to find a missing young girl, with adults, sometimes they have fingerprints on file with their company they work with, military service, something like that. With young children, they don't have a lot. They're young into the world. So you would try and find something at their apartment, and that would help you identify them if and when the need became apparent that you had to.
Police still have no indication as to what may have happened to Andrea Atkinson, and after each day goes by, police say fears of foul play are growing.
Days stretch into a week. It's as if Andrea disappeared into thin air. The entire city swings between hope of finding her alive and fear of finding her dead.
A missing child is a big concern to the city. It's more than just a regular missing person, particularly if there's a fear of a sexual assault or a homicide. It increases the intensity of the matter.
Nothing is spared in the search. Little do police know that Andrea never wandered far from home. Meanwhile, Andrea's mom continues to hold hope that her daughter will be found alive.
It makes me feel so good because I know she's like a little miracle. And I mean, everybody loves her. And it reinforces us to keep hanging in there and be positive. This is her daycare.
9 days after she went missing, Andrea Atkinson's lifeless body is found in the boiler room on the 6th floor of her apartment building.
Well, right now we're on the 6th floor at 33 Coatsworth, which is the maintenance area. The room behind us is the actual mechanical room where there are hot water tanks and heaters. Andrea was lying on her right side and her body was partially tucked underneath one of the hot water tanks. Approximately about a foot's gap between the floor and the bottom of the tank. She was wedged underneath that. And what I could see was it was the body of a blonde girl, young girl. Next to Andrea was a series of cards that she used to play with, and there were the New Kids on the Block, I think, were the name of the group. Those cards were scattered about the floor in front of her.
Gauthier summons the Forensic Identification Unit. The CSIs are experts at uncovering microscopic evidence that might help him solve the mystery. Who killed Andrea Atkinson?
Yeah, there's a boiler room there. You'll see it. It's already marked off.
We're looking for body fluids. Could be semen, could be blood, could be saliva. We're looking for hairs. We're looking for fibers. We're looking for fingerprints on the floor, different areas, and it's a very systematic approach. You start at one end and you just work your way through. You don't jump all over in something like this.
In a murder with no suspects and no witnesses, forensic evidence will be their only hope of catching the killer. Tony Tesserolo is a forensic scientist who specializes in trace evidence.
The transfer of hairs and fibers between locations or between individuals all stems back to what was said by Dr. Edmond Locard, a French scientist, who said that the microscopic debris that covers our bodies are the mute witnesses, sure and faithful, of all our actions and all our encounters. What he meant by that was that whenever two objects come into contact, there's always a transfer of material between them.
A vicious killer is on the loose, and Gauthier is determined to catch him.
You do that by staying focused, not allowing your emotion to get in the way, and concentrating on the matter at hand. Some of us call it keep your game face on, and that's what it is. You stay focused on what your job is, and your job is to find out what happened.
The boiler room is soundproof. Gauthier believes that the killer knew it was a location where no one would hear a little girl's cries for help. Then the CSIs find a critical clue.
Dave, you want to bag this, please? I think it's a child's bracelet. That's exactly what it looks like.
And as we stood back and looked, we saw that there was a small bracelet on the floor just to the right of where I'm standing.
That area is swept in.
And when you got down to the floor level and looked a little closer, you could see that there was in fact a reddish color smear that had been dried upon the floor.
If it's blood, this could be their best hope at finding out who killed Andrea Atkinson. At midnight, forensic detective Dick Bunting removes Andrea Atkinson's body from the boiler room. He and his partner wear full protective clothing Bunting says it's critical to avoid contamination of the crime scene.
We have to be able to collect the evidence so that we can say exactly where it came from. Also, we have to be well aware that we don't contaminate that evidence, add anything to it, take anything away, or collect it in such a way that we may degrade it. You have to think of her as a crime scene. You have to be able to use her to have her tell you what happened in her own way.
This is when CSIs sometimes make mistakes. Leo Adler is a defense attorney who has pitted himself against forensic experts for 3 decades.
I find that some scientists, sometimes subconsciously come to accept what the police tell them. And like a lot of people, they come to resent when someone questions them and perhaps finds fault with what they do.
For Adler, the forensics surrounding Andrea Atkinson's murder soon become an obsession.
Late last night, the body of a small girl was carried on a stretcher from the apartment complex.
The news of Andrea's murder shocks the community, leaving a city paralyzed with fear. A killer is still on the loose.
Police say forensic identification confirms the remains.
I wouldn't let my daughter out. Paranoid. I feel paranoid.
Andrea's mother cannot face the reality that her only daughter is gone. Homicide detective Rick Gauthier admits police made a mistake in not finding her body sooner.
The officers that were in charge of the search did not have in their possession a copy of the blueprints for the building, and in hindsight that turned out to be a significant error. What they did not realize is that on the 6th level, although it's not a full floor, there's an elevator room and a maintenance room, and that ultimately is where Andrea was found.
For the CSIs, losing 9 days is a major setback.
If we had found Andrea Atkinson within a day or 2 of her being murdered, the evidence would have been probably a lot greater, the physical evidence, because the condition of the body lent to a lot of degradation of evidence. And we have those questions, you know, if only we could have found her a lot earlier.
Gauthier zeroes in on a handful of maintenance workers who have keys to the locked 6th floor. He takes 3 men to headquarters for questioning. The first has a criminal record, which is of interest to Gauthier.
The first that we dealt with was a gentleman who worked here as a cleaner. He was under suspension at the time that this happened. And we had several callers call into the police to advise that they knew him and that they knew he had a history of sexually assaulting children.
The second knew Andrea well. He used to sleep with her mother.
The second, a cleaner or maintenance individual, he also had been involved with Andrea's mother for some time in a personal relationship. So he was well acquainted with Andrea.
The third suspect had access to the boiler room, but has a solid alibi.
That took us to the third one, who actually worked that Sunday in the building, but he went home early because he said he was sick. And he was somebody who had been in trouble with the law, but it was minimal.
All 3 deny killing Andrea. Gauthier decides that the cleaner who had been involved with Andrea's mom is his prime suspect.
Take it, you know, take what you need, get me out of here.
Homicide's resources now focus on building a case against suspect number 1. He takes blood and hair samples from all 3 men. At a time before DNA testing, blood typing and hair matching are the best forensic tools available. Now it's critical for the CSIs to retrieve the killer's hair, blood, or semen from the crime scene. Paul Culver is a Crown attorney in Toronto.
There's very seldom a witness to any murder, and quite often with children, particularly where you're dealing with a stranger abduction, there's no one you can easily link to. So a lot of times that's all you have. And it's not so much any single piece of the forensic science, it's the combination of it. When you bring all the pieces of the puzzles together, you see a picture.
To collect hair and fibers, Bunting uses a mylar sheet, an electrostatic blanket that creates plastic snapshots of the crime scene.
We hit it with a static electricity charge, and what it does is it attracts the dust and fibers and anything that's underneath this piece of mylar. And it can give you fibers on the floor, footprints, markings, anything like that that is on the floor. The dust and fibers, everything adheres to the mylar, so you can look at it later.
The remaining hairs and fibers are retrieved by hand in a painfully slow forensic process. Nothing can be overlooked. That night at the morgue, a scan with a UV light reveals semen stains on Andrea's clothes. Whoever killed her also raped her. Gautier is determined to hunt the child killer down. The morning after the discovery of Andrea's remains, the autopsy begins. The body is so badly decomposed that the coroner cannot determine the cause of death. A dead body often reveals clues about the crime and the killer. Not this time.
Andrea's body had been in the mechanical or the boiler room for approximately 9 days. The room temperature in there was fairly high. The water tanks themselves run a temperature in the 130 or 140 degree Fahrenheit range. So the room itself was very warm. Andrea's body was very decomposed after a 9-day period being exposed to that extreme heat in a confined area like that with no air movement.
The coroner speculates that the killer strangled Andrea with a shoelace that held her key tied around her neck. The next step is to send Andrea's clothes to the Center of Forensic Sciences in Toronto for detailed analysis. In the era before DNA testing, blood typing was the best way to narrow the list of suspects. Keith Kelder is the scientist who examined Andrea's clothes. Using a chemical called fast blue, he finds several semen stains.
And they were in the seat area of the panties, dress, and leotards, inside and outside. So several spots, several locations.
The 4 universal blood types are A, B, AB, and O. The killer's semen tells Kelder that he is blood type O. It is an important clue, but not conclusive. 30% of the male population has the same blood type as the killer.
And so here was evidence that was of some help, but that's it. It was able to put it on the scale of inclusion and exclusion.
The question now, are any of Gautier's suspects type O? Then a twist. There is a new suspect, Andrea's mom's boyfriend.
Ruth had a new boyfriend who had recently just moved in. Now, his name was Doug.
Police say Douglas Heinbach is to be interviewed regarding Andrea's whereabouts.
In cases where children get sexually assaulted or go missing and end up murdered, we always start in the home and work our way out. And a new boyfriend who had a history with the police was of interest to us.
Two weeks after her murder, Andrea's funeral draws so many mourners that loudspeakers are set up outside. Her murder has cast a dark cloud over the entire city, made darker by the knowledge that her killer remains at large.
Andrea, gift of God, your life was much too short. Taken by someone who took what was not theirs to take. We weep with grief and hurt and anger and outrage because we could not protect you.
The pressure is mounting daily on Rick Gautier to find Andrea Atkinson's murderer. The city is beginning to think the homicide squad is bungling the investigation. For 6 days, the CSIs have been waiting for blood expert Keith Kelder to examine the mysterious stain on the floor.
And so I arrived at the gray stains and I put my UV light on it, and sure enough, they fluoresced, and I tested them to see if they were semen stains.
They are. But will it match the type O semen found on Andrea's clothes?
Jeff, we're off to the races. Perfect.
Meanwhile, another team of scientists analyze the hairs which Bunting CSIs have retrieved from the crime scene. Tony Tesarolo is a leading hair and fiber expert.
There are a significant number of microscopic features that can be used to distinguish hairs between and amongst the individuals. And in doing so, the hair and fiber examiner would look at a hair microscopically at a magnification up to about 300 times to examine in detail the root of the hair, the tip of the hair, the individual components of the hair on the shaft, something called the cuticle, the cortex, and the medulla, and look at these microscopic features that are present in variable quantities and degrees within an individual and between and amongst individuals.
Of the hundreds of hairs retrieved from the crime scene, 4 are similar to those from 18-year-old Johnny Tercera.
We found a piece of your hair at the crime scene.
The hair is enough to convince Gauthier it's worth bringing Tercera back in.
I don't know. John absolutely denied having had any sexual or physical contact with Andrea, and certainly he denied having been involved in her death.
Maybe somebody that goes into the boiler room is super dragged it, stepped on my hair on the stairs.
But Tercera makes a stunning statement. 2 days after Andrea went missing, Johnny went up to the 6th floor to smoke a joint. He saw Andrea's dead body and ran. He claims he never told the police because he was afraid of getting fired for smoking dope on the job. Gauthier begins to wonder if he's been building a case against the wrong man. Defense attorney Leo Adler says that today he doubts this hair evidence would turn the focus on Tercera.
I don't think that there is a scientist today who would dare literally hang somebody or convict somebody on a hair, given what we now know and given the fact that hair doesn't have any particular characteristic except at the very root where you can get DNA. So that science, I think, has been, if not discredited, certainly diminished by today.
But in 1990, the hairs take Detective Gauthier's homicide investigation in a new direction.
Well, to be candid, I didn't believe his story at all. Things were turning John's way, and certainly I did not accept the fact that with the strong police presence, the community uproar over this missing girl that had been murdered, if he was innocently there and did come up here for a cigarette and saw the body, it would be important information for everybody to know right away, particularly the parents of a missing child.
Gauthier also learns that the 6-year-old knew Johnny. She thought of him as a hero for stopping other kids from picking on her, and she liked to help him with his cleaning tasks around the building. At the Center of Forensic Sciences, tests from the smear outside the boiler room confirm that it's semen and blood. The blood is Andrea's. The semen is type O. It's a match for the samples found on Andrea's clothes. The question is, are any of Gauthier's suspects type O? Kelder sends the crime scene samples over to the new radical DNA department. The lab is about to start a revolution in criminal investigations. In 1990, DNA profiling had barely been tested in the criminal justice system worldwide. The rape and murder of 6-year-old Andrea Atkinson was Toronto's first major case. Pam Newell ran the Centre of Forensic Science's groundbreaking DNA lab in 1990.
99.9% of all of our DNA is exactly the same. And it's DNA that says build a human being, put a head on the top, 2 eyes, a nose, ears, fingers, toes, liver that functions, heart that functions, etc. We're not interested in that DNA. We're interested in the DNA that is different amongst individuals. We're looking for DNA that's in regions of the DNA molecule that do not code for physical features or for physical functions. It's DNA in a repetitive sequence.
Veteran homicide detective Rick Gauthier was skeptical.
Back in the fall of 1990, DNA was something that we had just barely heard about. We certainly had not had any cases in Toronto involving DNA. And there was even controversy about whether or not it was a science back in those days.
Dr. John Way helped conduct the DNA tests on the Andrea Atkinson case.
So in a case like this, you'd be looking for blood, semen, saliva, anything that might contain DNA. Then you extract the DNA from those stains, and that's just a process of breaking open cells, releasing the DNA, purifying the DNA away from everything else that's in a cell, a lot of proteins, etc. And you end up with a pure preparation of DNA. It usually takes a week, 2 weeks to process that DNA and get it to a point where you can actually learn something from it and analyze it using the technology back in 1990.
While Gauthier waits for the DNA results, he continues to gather more forensic evidence. CSI Rick Bunting hopes to make the invisible visible with a forensic technique called superglue fuming.
Now, superglue is a process whereby you add cyanoacrylate, and that's a type of glue. We built a hood with plastic, put some of these glue fuming items that create the fumes inside this hood, and then let it sort of fumes to sort of vaporize throughout this hood. Once the enclosure was removed by ourselves, we then used a type of fingerprint powder.
A few fingerprints are found in the area around the stairs. The process works, but who will the prints match? 4 weeks after Andrea was murdered, the blood lab comes back with results of samples taken from the 4 main suspects.
Comparison samples were submitted from 4 suspects, and these samples were subjected to ABO typing, and it was determined that 1 was an A secretor, 2 were B secretors, and 1 was an O secretor.
A list of 4 is reduced to 1. John Tercera moves to the top of Detective Gauthier's list. The homicide investigator is shocked.
To be candid, the first 2 individuals on the surface were of great interest to us because of their backgrounds. And then along came the 18-year-old who had a minimal police contact, didn't seem to have any, certainly had no history of anything like this. When the forensics evidence started to turn his way, it surprised us a little bit because we hadn't really gotten to John Tercera yet.
Gauthier now focuses all his resources on Tercera. He gets a warrant to search his house, looking for clothing that might link him to the crime scene.
Once we got the early forensic results back, we decided that we were going to attempt to obtain a search warrant for John's house. There'd been a quantity of fiber found on Andrea's body and her clothing that we thought would be of significance to this case.
Johnny Tercera was wearing a pair of blue track pants that Sunday. The police confiscate them and send them to the lab for analysis.
First of all, we do some microscopy to determine the diameter of the fiber, the overall color, and the cross-sectional shape.
Exact colors are distinguished under different light sources. After that, the fibers are tested for biofringence or distinctive molecular structures. Finally, the fiber is heated to determine its melting point.
And at the end of the application of this battery of tests, if we find no significant differences with respect to the results, from the question fibers and the known fibers, then we must conclude that they are microscopically similar and could have originated from that same source.
Fibers from John's track pants are microscopically similar to those found all over Andrea's clothes. Defense attorney Leo Adler calls this junk science.
We're not talking about some exotic, handmade, original Chanel creation that was worn by the assailant, containing a type of fabric that only that dress contained. We're talking about ordinary track pants of the sort. Very, very common. Again, I think today, no scientist in his right mind would say that and give the types of conclusions that were given at the Teixeira case as to matching and the likelihood of anybody else having the same type of fiber in their pants.
Back in 1990, it's one more strike against Johnny Teixeira. Then the final devastating blow. DNA testing confirms the forensic trail.
The result of the analysis was, number one, we were successful in generating profiles from the semen and from the blood in the blood semen stain from the concrete floor. And we were successful in generating profiles from both the blood and from the semen in the semen-stained, blood-soaked leotards from the body of Andrea Atkinson. And that the profile from the semen could not have come from 3 of the suspects and matched the profile from John Carlos Teixeira.
Newell calls Gauthier. 7 million to 1. Johnny Teixeira killed Andrea Atkinson. In November 1990, a cop, a scientist, and a lawyer decide to put DNA profiling to the test and try to put John Teixeira behind bars for murdering a 6-year-old girl.
I remember very clearly meeting with Paul Culver and Rick Gauthier for the first time, bringing Autorad's DNA films with me to show them what a profile looked like and how easy it was to read that there was a match. And I think that they were less than impressed.
The Autorad is a piece of clear plastic, a human barcode. The radical science claims that no two people's genetic codes are alike, and that the DNA found at the crime scene was left by John Teixeira.
So this is the profile that was found on the sperm on the leotard of the victim. And this is the profile of sperm blood found on the floor in the boiler room, which matches Mr. Teixeira. It doesn't match suspect number 1, which was sampled twice. Doesn't match suspect number 2. Doesn't match suspect number 3.
And then they gave me the same cards back.
I can't say that I ever got it. My background is definitely not in science, but I knew Pam Newell. I knew that she was a very respected forensic scientist, and she did her best in layman's terms to explain to me.
Detective Gauthier considers his options. Without the DNA profile, he's not sure he's got enough to arrest John Teixeira. On the other hand, the homicide detective is nervous about trusting a science he barely understands.
Well, back in 1990, the thought of going to trial with DNA evidence with what we knew at that time, we were concerned. A homicide investigator knows that you only get one opportunity to prosecute these cases, and you have to present the best evidence you have. And typically in these cases, it's hair and fiber and serology. DNA was new, and we did not know what impact, if any, DNA was going to have on our case.
He and his partner consult Crown Attorney Paul Culver, for whom the case has a deep personal meaning.
Andrea Atkinson, who was ironically born on the same day as my daughter, the same day and year, she was exactly the same age. So a lot of the things that we saw in Andrea's life as a 6-year-old at that time, the Barbie dress, the new kids on the block card, the wanting to be out playing with her friends on a Sunday morning, became much more personal.
Culver advises them to make the arrest.
18-year-old John Carlos Terciera, seen here moments after being handcuffed by homicide officers Tom McNamara and Rick Gauthier.
Defense attorney Leo Adler takes Johnny's case. He believes the 18-year-old is innocent.
You get to know your client. You get to know your client very, very well, especially in a case such as this. Johnny has been consistent throughout that it wasn't him. No matter how I cross-examined Johnny, he was consistent in what he was telling me and the fact that he hadn't done it.
In the months leading up to the trial, Pam Newell's lab conducts further DNA tests.
We had a frequency of occurrence of 1.18 million for the semen found on the leotard from Andrea Atkinson, and we had a frequency of occurrence of 1 in 7 million for the semen sample found on the concrete floor.
According to her tests, there is no doubt that John Terciera raped the 6-year-old. Now it's up to her to explain the science to a jury. 2 years pass before the John Terciera murder case goes to trial. By now, scientists are bitterly divided on the accuracy of DNA profiling.
At that time, there was still a controversy raging, particularly in the United States, and there were two groups of scientists that sort of traveled around North America, really testifying, one group testifying for the Crown or the prosecution, and one group testifying for the defense.
For Pam Newell, the case is a chance to prove that DNA profiling works.
This was a very significant case for me personally and for the Center of Forensic Sciences and the DNA unit. This was one of our early cases. This is a case that had a tremendous amount of media coverage and an enormous amount of interest from the general public.
Leo Adler puts the entire forensic team on trial.
I saw problems. The computer dates, for example, were out of whack. The times were out of whack. It wasn't scientific to me, at least in my view. And I felt that for this particular case, that the center was really biting off more than it could chew.
The trial process here was strictly about forensics. It was an attack on the credibility of the police service. It was an attack on the Center of Forensic Sciences. It was an attack on the sciences themselves. And what was not dealt with was what happened with John Terciera that day. He testified he had nothing to do with this, but the trial was all about the forensics.
Adler humbles the forensic scientists one by one. Despite superglue fuming and days of examining one partial print, Detective Bunting could not prove without a doubt that the print was John Terciera's.
The ridges were there, the fingers were there. We spent a couple days trying to enhance, trying to get more out of those fingers, and we just could not get enough to identify them to anybody.
Adler argues that because John Terciera had regular access to the boiler room, it's no wonder the CSIs found hairs similar to his. He even reveals that the blood Terciera voluntarily gave to police took an extra day to reach the lab, trying to create reasonable doubt whether it's his blood at all.
I mean, ultimately, I think, I hope...
Leo Adler is making a compelling case that forensics aren't foolproof.
I think people have to realize that science is not always infallible.
The head of the DNA unit at the Center of Forensic Sciences, Pamela Newell,
Up next is the prosecution's star witness and Gauthier's last hope, DNA expert Pamela Newell.
You have more than your friends?
For 3 days, defense attorney Leo Adler grills Pam Newell and her DNA evidence. To this day, they are bitter rivals.
Well, Pam was the head and the scientist at that time. She was the DNA department at the CFS. And she very much wanted for DNA to not only be accepted, but for the CFS to become accepted. There was no accreditation system at the time. And she saw this as the case that would make her. In retrospect, I thought that if I cross-examined her at length, that the jury would see the problems with the case.
I think that Mr. Adler's approach was that this was black magic, that we didn't know what we were doing. And his attack was, if he couldn't break down the DNA science, that he would break down the DNA scientists.
In the final days of the 4-month trial, John Tercera himself takes the stand. His story never changes. He didn't kill Andrea Atkinson. The forensic scientists have made a mistake.
The forensics are the forensics. They don't change, they don't lie. The facts stay the same. In John's case, he was an 18-year-old that had raped and murdered a 6-year-old girl. It's not something that is easy to admit to.
After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returns their verdict. Johnny Tercera is found guilty for the murder and rape of Andrea Atkinson.
20-year-old John Tercera left the court a convicted child killer this afternoon.
To this day, he declares his innocence.
I can't believe that if Johnny did this, that he wouldn't have faced up to it by now. As I said, I've come to know him, and I've been doing this for almost 29 years, and maybe I've fallen for a story that isn't true, and that and my assessment of him is wrong. But it's a case that had too much reliance on science that certainly in some aspects we know today is just flawed.
Rick Gauthier has worked more child murder cases than any homicide cop in Toronto. He's certain he got the right man.
A successful homicide investigator has to have the ability to detach their personal feelings from the case. And that is so important. It's too easy to get wrapped up in the community problem, the family issues that are surrounding it. And if you don't do that, no one else will.
Leo Adler has appealed Johnny Tercera's murder conviction at the Supreme Court and has been denied. He's still convinced the CSIs were wrong.
I think that there were problems with this case. I think that what I would like to see is not a reanalysis of the extract of DNA, which apparently may still be around, but I would like to take the leotards, which was the key piece of evidence because it's the leotards that the little girl wore, and do a modern-day DNA analysis.
Newell says she has conducted this test.
We went back to the extracted DNA from the samples in this case and used the most current DNA analysis system that's available. The profiles matched. The frequency of occurrence is now, with 13 different loci, is less common than 1 in the population of the world. So it's less common than 1 in 6 billion. In other words, it's virtual identity. Would you expect to see this profile again? No, you would not. In anyone who has ever been born or ever will be born. I think that's the end of the case.
John Tercera's life sentence brings no comfort to Andrea Atkinson's mother. During the futile search for her daughter, she never gave up hope.
We have a bond, and I can't get through life without her, and she can't get through life without me.
In 1994, her words prove prophetic. She commits suicide on what would have been Andrea's 10th birthday.
Wednesday, October 2nd, 2002. It's a lovely autumn day in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area. Citizens are going about their everyday lives and business. But things are about to change. 6:04 p.m. in a shopping mall parking lot in Silver Spring, Maryland. A man returns to his car with groceries and is shot dead.
There was no rhyme or reason.
The next morning at 7:40 a.m., a maintenance worker is gunned down. Half an hour later, so is a taxi driver.
I'm at one crime scene, and there's notification that we have another crime scene.
At 8:37 a.m., a woman is killed outside a post office.
Maybe 30 minutes later, there's another shooting.
This time, it's a mother of two murdered while cleaning her van.
What is going on here that makes these people targets?
A population under siege.
The potential pool of targets is everybody.
We were looking for a ghost because we didn't know where he would strike. Is it terrorist? Is it some nut out there taking shots at people?
No one is safe, not even the cops.
In my normal line of work, I didn't fear for my life on an everyday basis.
Hundreds of investigators join forces in the struggle to catch an invisible killer. Can forensic science help put an end to the terror? Five people have been gunned down in cities and towns around Washington, D.C. Four of them in the space of 3 hours.
We had a lot of people that were dead, and nobody knew why.
Montgomery County Police Chief Charles Moose looks for anything that might connect the victims.
But it's really people doing everyday kinds of things. Guy picking up groceries, guy cutting grass at a car dealership, a guy pumping gas in his taxi cab.
When you started to make a list of the people that were dead, there was nothing that tied them together. Not their race, not their age, not their gender.
Authorities scour the morning's 4 murder scenes for any clues that could point to who's behind this. But at every location, it's the same story.
It's a pretty nondescript crime scene, not a lot of evidence. There's a little bit of blood, but nothing really from a forensic standpoint.
Not a single shell casing from the bullets that felled the victims is recovered. Which begs the question, where did the shots come from? Witnesses in each vicinity are questioned, to no avail.
People don't particularly see anything, don't particularly hear anything. We're really at the hands of the medical examiner to tell us what happened.
At the morgue, bullets and bullet fragments removed from the victims provide authorities with their first evidence. They are rushed to the ballistics labs of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives for analysis.
We weigh the bullets, measure the diameter of the base of the bullet. This is to help us determine the caliber of the bullet itself.
Experts also study the distinct land and groove impressions imparted to the bullets when they travel through a gun barrel.
The random microscopic imperfections in the barrel will transfer to the bullet and repeat themselves from one shot to the next, much like that of your fingerprint.
And once we determine the caliber, the number of lands and grooves, their measurements, we're able to check a database to see the possible manufacturers of firearms that bullet may have been fired from.
In the face of the inexplicable killings, officers from dozens of jurisdictions pour into the streets on high alert.
We didn't know if it was one person, if it was two persons, or if it was a group of people.
In a startling development, the FBI visits Moose with disturbing intelligence that suggests a motive behind the attacks: terrorism.
We get the briefing that Al-Qaeda has been trained to shoot Congress people in the Washington, D.C. area. And then the caveat, if not Congress people, then best available targets.
I mean, keep in mind, this is very much in the shadow of 9/11.
And if it was terrorists doing it for terrorist purposes, then I'm not sure we would know what that would look like.
News of the bizarre multiple homicides soon sends shockwaves throughout the region. Moose knows it's only a matter of time before the media trickle becomes a flood. But he's got nothing to tell them until word arrives of the first break in the case. A witness to one of the shootings has come forward.
There was a landscaper nearby, and he actually heard the shot.
He reports seeing a vehicle leaving the scene, a white van. And inside the van, 2 white men.
The picture's in.
Police quickly obtain photographs of possible models of the white van and distribute them to the press.
Let's do it.
They wanted the media to get out there so the public could help them find these guys.
That afternoon, Moose holds a press conference and tries to reassure the public.
We don't have anybody right now.
It's a tough task, especially when he speaks of the victims.
The worst thing about the case was that all of the victims were chosen at random. So consequently, everyone in the community felt like a potential target.
And that's what really scared the hell out of people.
The rest of the afternoon and early evening pass without incident.
You're just hoping somehow that it's some freakish thing. This is just all some person having a mental health crisis, and it's going to be over.
But such hopes are in vain. Pascal Charlotte, a 72-year-old carpenter, is slain in Washington, D.C. while out for an evening stroll. He is the 6th casualty in just over 24 hours. On the morning of October 4th, a tense population awakes. And the horror continues. A 43-year-old woman is shot in the parking lot of an arts and crafts store in Fredericksburg, Virginia. A white van is spotted leaving the scene. But this time, there's a miracle. The victim survives. Determined to catch the assailant, authorities set up a task force and centralize operations. The ATF, FBI, DEA, Secret Service, and the renowned U.S. Marshals all sign on.
We had, I think, 60 law enforcement agencies involved from all over Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland.
A phone tip line is established, along with a $50,000 reward for information. That same day, ballistics results arrive from the ATF. The findings offer investigators the first tangible piece of this deadly puzzle.
Those bullets and bullet fragments were being fired from the same firearm.
And the weapon ID'd is a long-range, high-powered rifle.
We're dealing with a .22 class rifle.
Experts conclude the shooter is using either the U.S. military's M16 or its civilian version, the AR-15. A sniper is on the loose, assassinating citizens at will. The task force presses its investigation. checking parole records, gun purchases, and the criminal histories of anyone who owns firearms. They talk to every gun dealer in the region and appeal to the public.
We believe this is the type of gun that is being used by the assailant. We're asking the public to please report any suspicious owners of weapons like this to our tip line.
What kind of gun is that, Chief?
Fear grips the entire area.
People were staying home. People were afraid. It was all over the area. The malls had less people. The freeways had less people.
There were people, citizens, walking up and just saying, you know, I need to know whether I should take my kid to school tomorrow, or I should pick him up, or should I let him take the bus?
Law enforcement does its best to calm public nerves.
The police are everywhere. We're in your neighborhoods. We're stationed outside your children's schools.
There are no shootings on the weekend. Police and the public again dare to dream the killings have stopped. They are unaware that a killer has simply taken a respite before committing his most heinous act yet. Five days of random shootings around Washington, D.C. have killed 6 and injured 1. On Monday, October 7th at 8:09 a.m. in Bowie, Maryland, 13-year-old schoolboy Iron Brown is shot through the chest.
There was a kid going to school, an even more innocent victim, which just sort of ratcheted this whole thing up.
It seemed to be a direct message that we couldn't keep the kids okay.
Police immediately cordon off the area. The boy is administered emergency treatment. Medical personnel managed to save his life. A massive search is launched of the schoolyard, as well as a wooded area nearby.
Line searches are set up to go systematically through an area, section by section, and not miss anything because you're shoulder to shoulder.
This effort leads to the recovery of a .223 caliber shell casing in the woods, 140 yards from where Brown fell. The surrounding bush has been separated and matted down. A nearby footpath leads out to a major road and easy escape. And off the path, investigators find a strange piece of evidence. A calling card from the sniper. This clue is rushed to the lab. It's the death card from the tarot deck.
You're very hopeful that there'll be a fingerprint on it, any DNA on it. Is there anything in the ink that may lead you to some specialty shop?
No prints or DNA traces are found, but across the top is written 3 shocking words. Call me God.
It was basically mocking the police. Come catch me. I'm invincible.
The card makes authorities wonder just what kind of psychopath they're dealing with. FBI profilers and behavioral experts paint a picture of the likely suspect.
The expert's perspective was white males do serial killings, that the person was going to be 25 to 30 and not have a girlfriend and be in the military.
Whoever the sniper may be, Moose sees a small spark of hope in his message.
We now have somebody that wants to talk about this.
As investigators ponder how to open communication with a killer, the slaughter continues. Dean Harold Myers was a 53-year-old engineering project manager. A witness sees a white van leaving the scene. The task force tip line overflows with calls as the reward for information surpasses $200,000. Based on credible tips, several suspects are investigated and arrested. The Pentagon lends a hand, providing state-of-the-art surveillance technology. Even the president weighs in.
We're lending all the resources of the federal government to find us, whoever it is.
Unfortunately for police, their relationship to the press is growing testy.
We were essentially angry at the pace of the investigation. We were angry that we were not being told very much.
It made it very difficult to conduct an investigation ongoing while the media is conducting one simultaneously.
Leaks become pervasive.
We had to tell them that if they were caught following the investigators, they were going to be arrested.
The unrelenting sniper claims his next victim on October 10th. Kenneth Bridges was a 53-year-old father of 6 and a respected businessman. Again, a white van is reported fleeing the vicinity. October 14th brings yet another murder. Linda Franklin was an FBI analyst and mother of 2. As at all the shootings, police shut down traffic in the entire region.
Driving down Route 1, I would see a half-dozen agents, you know, guns drawn, big assault rifles, surrounding white vans, pulling the drivers out.
But the number of white vans out there is vast.
I remember sitting for 3 or 4 turns of the traffic light there, and I counted 50 white vans that would go through.
No vans are isolated. No suspects stick. No pattern emerges.
All of our many, many leads right now are leading to nothing.
People in the Washington area are living under incredible strain. Even the police feel like targets.
My kids were running through parking lots because I made them. I had them ducking down in the car at gas stations.
There were gas stations where they would have big signs out in front, "We will pump your gas."
My kids were sending me out the door saying, "You got to catch him today, Mom, so we can go back outside and play." And, you know, it was just every day, every breathing moment, you were thinking about this case.
The number of calls to the tip line becomes staggering.
I believe we had 60,000 emails in addition to the 100,000 phone calls.
Police remain convinced the key to preventing more deaths is establishing communication with the sniper. What they don't know is death has come calling. The Washington, D.C. region is living in terror as the death toll continues to mount. Authorities desperately want to make contact with a sniper who calls himself God. They have no idea that God is trying to contact them too. But with thousands of calls overwhelming dispatchers, getting through isn't easy. Then, on October 17th, Officer Derek Belisle, spokesman for the Montgomery County Police, nears the end of a very long shift. He takes what he hopes is his last call.
Montgomery Police Department, how may I help you? Shut up and listen or more people will die.
That phone call was unlike anything I'd ever had before. It was a very firm voice, a male voice that was very insistent.
I am the sniper. I have tried to contact you many times. Your phones are either busy or you hang up. It better not happen this time.
Yes, sir, I'm listening.
The caller delivers Belisle's a strange message.
Montgomery, Alabama. A liquor store robbery. 2 women shot. 1 died.
I think that he was trying to send a message that he was the real deal. That if you don't think I'm serious, check the Montgomery killings. The call lasted probably just a little bit more than a minute, and after it was over, I called the command center.
As police begin searching for an Alabama connection, the sniper strikes again in Ashland, Virginia. The victim is 37-year-old Jeffrey Hopper. A bullet tears through his upper abdomen and shatters several organs. But he is the 3rd target to survive. Agents comb the surrounding area for evidence.
The ATF went out into the woods and did a once-over and actually found a shell casing.
And nearby, something more compelling. A second communication from the sniper. It's immediately rushed to the lab.
And so whatever's in that bag, in that note, is going to be critical to our forensics, to our science. So the handling of that whole thing is done very professionally, done very methodically. But that all takes time.
Again, no prints or DNA is found. The note is then analyzed for its content. Investigators first noticed the use of "we" and "us" repeatedly, advertising more than one killer. And that's not all.
They asked for $10 million, and they asked us to deliver it over a credit card that they could use at the ATMs to do withdrawals.
We were scratching our heads with that one. Here we've got some sniper out there shooting people. Is it all for money? It didn't quite make sense what their MO was at that point.
But in their zeal to analyze the letter forensically, authorities are late to notice a key piece of its content. The gunman left the number of a payphone outside the restaurant where Hopper was shot, and a time they would call police at that payphone to negotiate their demands. The hour has long passed, leaving law enforcement open to the sniper's threat of more killings to come. But now the task force has a specific phone number, and the marshals can bring more of their skills to bear.
Our expertise in our technical operations area and our electronic surveillance was needed.
If the snipers can be convinced to call the number they left in their note, agents can finally close in on them.
The ability to track a telephone call is pretty simple. You just have to have a number on one end or the other to research either all the calls going out from that phone, or we could trap every call coming into there.
We went ahead and forwarded any calls into that number to our command posts.
Moose has the media deliver a message to the snipers. Call us at the number of the payphone by the restaurant that you provided. And the cops are waiting. Within 24 hours, they get a hit.
Hello, this is Chief Moose.
Call me God.
Keep them going.
Okay.
You have failed us.
In less than a minute, the marshals succeed in tracing the number the snipers are calling from.
We got the location.
The information was relayed down to our inspector in that area, and he put it out to all the units.
SWAT teams descend on the scene. They target a man in a phone booth and his partner nearby.
All right. They got him! They got him!
on the television screens. Possible snipers have been arrested in Washington. Breaking news, CNN. Everybody got kind of excited, putting it all together. White van, payphone.
Yeah. But the U.S. Marshals soon realized there's been a big mistake.
No, you've got the wrong phone booth. What? You're on the wrong side of the street.
The payphone in front of the white van was not the phone that the sniper had called from.
It's from that phone booth over there.
The phone they had used is only yards away.
Maybe they picked that location because there was a person on the phone at the time in a white van.
The snipers slip away again. But they may have made a serious mistake, telling Officer Belials about the Alabama liquor store robbery.
I called Montgomery, Alabama, and spoke to Sergeant Martinez, who told me that indeed a shooting had occurred at a liquor store.
And the strangest thing, when the suspect ran away, there was an item dropped.
And on that item is a crucial piece of forensic evidence that could change everything. Police have missed the snipers in a botched takedown. But a lead from the killers themselves keeps law enforcement on their trail. At a robbery in Montgomery, Alabama, a gunman dropped a magazine from his pocket as he fled.
The magazine that was dropped was a guns and ammo magazine. And in fact, I think one of the pages was folded over to sniper scopes.
And on that page is a vital piece of evidence.
They had lifted a print off of that magazine, but they hadn't processed it.
The magazine is shipped to the Sniper Task Force, and the fingerprint is run through the FBI's massive federal database. The search for a match strikes gold. Investigators are shocked. The man identified is only 17 years old. His name is Lee Boyd Malvo.
We had talked about these sniper video games that kids play. So early on, we hadn't dismissed the fact that it may be kids playing out a video game.
Malvo had been fingerprinted 2 years before, when he was held temporarily as a possible illegal immigrant from Jamaica.
Also, thank you.
Reviewing various related documents, the marshals noticed something intriguing.
I saw that there was a common denominator in these reports.
There is frequent mention of another person in Malvo's company, a man by the name of John Muhammad.
When you go through an immigration process, you have to tell the authorities who you are being sponsored by, who you're going to be associated with, and that information all pointed to John Muhammad.
Police conduct research on Muhammad. William Sarukas taps a federal database, getting a hit on a driver's permit for a John Muhammad in Washington, and before that, in California.
I called a friend of mine from the California Department of Motor Vehicles and asked that he get Muhammad's picture to me as soon as possible. That was on the night of the 21st when I called him. I had that picture at about 3 a.m. the 22nd.
Authorities get their first look at Muhammad. Not another teenager, but a man in his 30s. They wonder, is he also involved in the killings? And will the killings ever stop? Bus driver Conrad Johnson, 35 and a father of 2, is gunned down in Aspen Hill. He is victim number 13. Near the scene is another note. It reasserts the sniper's demand for $10 million and says, your incompetence has cost you another life. The press gets wind that authorities have possible suspects in their sights. But Moose isn't talking.
We were not happy that we weren't getting information and that things weren't moving forward.
But the chief has his reasons for keeping things quiet.
We weren't able to say that they were the snipers. We couldn't put too strong connections out there and prematurely because this was a huge case. So it was a very delicate dance.
Further research reveals that John Muhammad has a vehicle registered to his name, but it's not a white van. It's an older model Chevrolet Caprice, and it's been around.
We found 12 instances where law enforcement had made inquiries on that particular car, almost all of them consistent with shootings either before or after.
Muhammad was talked to by a police officer during a traffic stop following a shooting, you know, when we shut down the freeways.
The reason nothing happened is because at that time it was not a wanted vehicle.
Police were only focused on a white van.
The search for the white van became everything. That if we can just find a right white van, we'll solve this case. The white van became the white elephant of the entire event.
Muhammad's name is entered into the task force's phone tip line database, and it pays off.
Amongst these 60,000 tips that we had received a tip from someone that knew Muhammad.
Investigators are soon across the country in Washington state, interviewing Muhammad's buddy from the military, Robert Holmes.
We were in the Army. We were at Fort Lewis at the same time for probably about 2-3 years. We were always good friends, so we stayed in touch.
Holmes tells authorities Muhammad paid frequent visits to his house.
John Muhammad. What's up, man?
On one of these visits, Muhammad showed up with a new companion.
How you going, man? Hey, you know how they got...
He came down one day and he had Lee with him, and he introduced Lee to me. He said Lee was a sniper.
It's a sniper. Sniper, how you doing, man?
I mean, it was like he said it, and you know, you could have taken it as a joke or whatever.
Holmes relates the story of how Muhammad met Malvo in Jamaica while dating the boy's mother, and later sponsored the youth when mother and son immigrated to the U.S. It was during this time that Malvo was fingerprinted. He soon became estranged from his mother and hit the road with Muhammad.
Malvo was desperately looking to follow a dominant male figure that he had not had prior in his life.
Okay, you're loaded. Peer down your barrel. You see him? Peer down the scope. Okay, you ready? You're gonna shoot.
Several reports refer to it as a father-son relationship.
Fire one.
Where he took this young man under his wing and was gonna show him the ways of the world.
But after several failed businesses, failed marriages, and a bitter custody dispute, John Muhammad's worldview was increasingly fueled by anger, resentment, and paranoia.
He was depressed and probably a little bit angry, but it's probably like controlled anger.
One day, Muhammad and Malvo left their friend's home in Washington state and headed for Washington, D.C. Muhammad told Holmes he was off to settle a score with his ex-wife, Mildred.
He says, I pretty much know where Mildred's at. He said Mildred's in the D.C. area. It's just a matter of me pinpointing her.
Months later, when Holmes sees news coverage of the sniper case, he becomes suspicious.
And the reason I called is there was people getting killed. Me and John, we're as close to being brothers without having the blood, okay? So if it had been my blood brother doing that and I thought it was him, I would still have to make the call.
John Muhammad and Lee Malvo are now the investigation's prime suspects. But can police find them before another life is taken? Authorities believe they have finally identified their snipers, but are racing the clock trying to find them before more victims are killed.
So do we or do we not release these names to the media?
There can be good and bad in notifying the public. The good is we have that many more people looking for this person. The bad can be that we drive that person away from an area that we may already have an interest in.
You put their names out there. Do they run? Do they get rid of the automobile? Do they get rid of the gun?
There was some debate, and ultimately it was decided not to release the information.
Back in Tacoma,
Yeah, they were standing right over there.
Holmes shows police the tree in his backyard the suspects used for target practice.
What gun was it? It's a Bushmaster, AR-15. Powerful weapon.
But in yet another leak, the media gets tipped off to Holmes and descends on his residence.
No comment. No comment. Later.
They were camped out in front of the house. They had the street blocked off, all this craziness.
The best lead yet was in the news, and that if our suspects saw that clip, you know, they'd be in the wind.
Things get even worse for the task force.
The word came out through one of the network media outlets that the police were looking for a Chevy Caprice, and they had the tag number. The decision was made by the editor at our radio station to use that information and to repeat that information rather frequently.
October 24th, 1 a.m. Only 6 hours since Muhammad's license plate number was leaked to the public. Whitney Donahue, a refrigeration mechanic, parks at a Maryland rest stop off Interstate 70.
Whitney Donahue had been following this case extremely closely because he drove a white van and got pulled over a number of times just as a citizen driving a white van, which you can imagine was very frustrating for him.
Earlier, he had heard radio reports disseminating information about the Caprice.
He wrote down the license plate, NDA21Z.
Donahue finds himself just a few feet away from the most wanted men in America. He calls 911. But in an all too familiar twist that has plagued the case from the start, he is unable to get through. The mechanic doesn't flee. He calls again and again. Eventually, he reaches authorities.
Yeah, I can see the sniper's car. I'm right beside him.
His call is routed to the command center.
It's just parked there. I don't see anyone. I don't know. Where are you? I'm just off of I-70 at a rest stop.
Police prepare to move in.
3 different SWAT teams from Montgomery County, Maryland State Police, and the FBI were teaming up.
Law enforcement must prepare for all contingencies. Has the car been abandoned? Or are the snipers hiding inside? Or worse, are they in the woods, waiting to pick off anyone who approaches? State troopers close off the highways around the rest stop. With the area secure, the SWAT team goes into action. Muhammad and Malvo were both asleep in the car, but they're wide awake now. Police have captured 2 men they believe terrorized the D.C. area for 23 days. ATF agent Tim Curtis arrives at dawn with a search warrant and examines their car for evidence. He soon finds exactly what he's hoping for. An AR-15 Bushmaster rifle.
It was at that point, all the agents and law enforcement personnel on the scene, yeah, you could hear a gasp of relief coming from them.
The rifle is rushed to the lab to determine if it's the murder weapon.
We examined it to see if it was operational, and we took it down to the water tank and test fired. We recovered the bullets and put them on the comparison microscope.
The impressions on these bullets exactly match impressions on the bullets recovered from the victims. Police have their snipers. A further investigation of the Blue Caprice reveals an astonishing twist to the assassin's MO.
You can notice above the license plate area, there's a small hole cut into the frame of the vehicle itself. The snipers could actually lift up the back portion of the rear seat and crawl into the trunk area. And with the trunk open just a little bit, they were able to sight their victims.
This explains how they escaped detection and why no shell casings were found at most of the shootings. With the killers in custody, the task force wraps up operations.
The fact that this task force was able to come together and bring this case to closure in 3 weeks is very commendable.
Malvo and Muhammad are tried under Virginia's new anti-terrorism statute for homicide with intent to terrorize the government or the public at large. The trials do little to illuminate the pair's motivations. One idea of Muhammad's reasoning comes from his ex-wife, Mildred.
It's her theory that he was killing all these people so he could eventually kill her.
And she would just be one of the other random victims in this shooting spree.
And then he would get custody of the kids.
Malvo testifies against Muhammad to avoid the death penalty. He receives multiple life sentences and will never get out of jail.
Malvo contacted the police and made sure that the police knew who he was. He wanted to be a rock star out of all of this. He wanted to be famous in his own way. He is.
Muhammad has been sentenced to the death penalty in Virginia. The conviction was affirmed by the state appellate court and will stand. Muhammad was clearly the team leader and the one that had the military knowledge, the knowledge of the weapons, the plan that put in motion this whole crazy scheme.
He didn't look like a maniac killer. He looked like anybody else on the street.
John may have ended up as a psychopath, but that wasn't the way it started. If you meet him, you'll like him. He's a nice guy. He just got twisted, you know, and like I said, there's no, you know, you're looking for, oh, well, it was this. No, the guy simply lost his mind.
The millions of people that live in this region had their lives taken away for an entire month, living in fear.
It wasn't just one murder victim and one family. It was so many families and so many people that it affected.
Why did it happen? I'll never know, and so I'll just always pray for the families of the victims.